Do you even lift, bro? Today, we're going to talk about 7 reasons why you do not look like you work out. Hey, I'm Eric Bach. Today, we're going to talk about how you can optimize your training, your nutrition, your lifestyle to be able to build an aesthetic, great looking physique that really illustrates the amount of hard work you are already putting in the gym. Because one of the most frustrating things that I hear on a regular basis is, Eric, I'm working hard, but I feel like I do not look like I lift. And this doesn't just happen to people who are inexperienced in the gym. I actually hear it a lot from former athletes because you see, training for performance is a different animal than training for your best looking physique. A lot of people don't get this difference. And the reality is you have to train specifically for the goals that you have in mind. Now, 7 reasons you do not look like you work out. The underlying issue here is a misalignment between what your training looks like and what your specific goals are. Let me give you an example. When you're training for performance, the primary goal for performance is to optimize what you're doing and the overall impact it's going to have on a sport. As an example, if you get somebody who's training to be athletic, they're training to build power, they are training to build maximum strength to an extent, but like training to build speed, a lot of times what happens is you are focusing primarily on lifting heavier and you're lifting more explosively. You are trying to make heavier weights feel light. You're trying to be explosive. You're trying to move the bar fast. And when it comes to developing a physique, when it comes to looking like you lift, the difference here is you often have to make lighter weights feel heavy, and you want to be able to slow down your concentric and your eccentric to be able to maximize tension within the muscles to optimize the physique building component versus just trying to be strong and explosive to hit a PR or to move a different amount of weight and create a certain type of contraction that's going to carry over to the sport that you're looking for. Now, that's a general overarching philosophy. Let me break down the 7 key things that I see most often. Number 1, you're doing random exercises. A lot of people will jump into the gym and they will just do different exercises and consistently rotate through exercises because they get bored or they are trying to confuse the muscles. Listen, your muscles do not get confused. They do not have a brain. Your muscles only understand time and they only understand the tension in which they have to be able to create for a certain duration of time. This comes down to 2 factors that are important for building lean muscle. We have mechanical tension, that is lifting a heavy weight through a full range of motion, and we have metabolic stress. That is how long a muscle is being stressed, the duration of the set. And so when we understand what those variables are, we can manipulate them to be able to build lean muscle with a number of different exercises. Now, the issue becomes when people change exercises too often. What we have to understand is to really build muscle, to look like you lift, you have to get skilled in the right exercises to do it. And the only way that you build a skill is by practicing something time and time again. Let's extrapolate this for a second. Now, imagine you're trying to learn a language. Would you do better learning that language by going to a class one day a week for 3 hours and then never practicing it again? Or would it be better practicing that language maybe for 30 minutes, 5 or 6 days per week? 30 minutes, 5 or 6 days per week. And so the big issue is when it comes to learning anything, and particularly in the gym, if you're constantly changing what you're doing, you're never going to develop the skill to really master it. And if you don't master something such as a movement pattern like a squat, because you're always changing the exercise that you're doing, 1, you're going to limit the amount of weight that you can use directly on the exercise. 2, you're never going to master your technique. And so you're going to leave a lot of results on the bar. Number 3, you're not going to be refined enough in the process to be able to improve things like your mind-muscle connection. Let me give you an example with something like a squat. Let's say you go in the gym and every time you have a lower body day, you decide that you want to be able to do a different lower body exercise because you don't really like squats and they're hard, right? So what happens when you take somebody who's never done a squat before, they get under the bar, they look like a drunk baby giraffe. Knees are diving all over, technique is every which way. And because of that, they're just simply trying to not die. They're just trying to execute the exercise a little bit better. But you take somebody who gets more advanced, they are automatically locked in. Their brain isn't thinking about a million different things with technique. And when you get somebody who's more advanced, you can say something like, hey, what I want you to do on the squat is I want you to push your knees out and I want you to squeeze your quads through the bottom of the rep all the way to the top, right? And so when we start to add in some different cues like this, we can really start to A, focus on improving technique. B, we can also focus on connecting with different muscles during different parts of an exercise in order to maximize the muscular contraction. And you simply cannot get to this point if you're just doing random exercises all the time. The reality is you do not have to change exercises every session, every 2 sessions, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't have to. The reality is as long as you are pushing more weight, as long as you are creating progressive tension overload on your exercises, you do not need to change what you are doing. Now, can some variation be helpful when you get a little bit more advanced? Yes. But if you're a little bit more advanced, you're probably not listening to a podcast that's talking about why you don't look like you work out, right? And so later on, yeah, you might want to rotate some variation to make sure you don't have overuse injuries, but that wouldn't be a problem if you already had the physique that you're happy with. So problem number one is too many random exercises. Remember, we have to training like a skill. We have to treat mastering each exercise like it is acquiring a skill, because it actually is. And when we improve that skill, then it can refine that process and get more out of every rep that we do. The second reason you do not look like you lift is not having a structured plan. Listen, anytime you want to do something in life, if you do not have a plan that's going to tell you what variables that you need to focus and put your attention onto, you're not going to succeed. Let's look at the world of business. Let's say you have a business plan. It'd be great to have some numbers. Awesome start. But if we do not break that down to the certain actions that we need to take, maybe the number of calls that you have, the number of conversations that you're having, the number of contracts that you're writing, if we do not have key metrics that we're looking at in that regard in the business world, we don't really have any structure to get to a goal at the end of the day. And so what happens is a lot of people in the gym, they approach it like they have no business plan. They have no idea what their goals are, and they have no idea how they're going to get there. Instead, what you often see, people just gathering random exercises off of TikTok, after YouTube, off of Instagram, and all these different platforms, piecing them together and hoping they're going to get results. The reality is the success of a program, the way that you look like you lift, is following structured programs. And it's because structured programs are not just a random smattering of exercises, sets, and reps. It is a set of variables that build one on top of each other to create an end result. In addition, a proper program is going to be designed with nutrition and built around your lifestyle. Let me give you a common example. I see people will have no structure in the gym, and then they follow a random nutrition protocol, like they're intermittent fasting, they're lifting 5 or 6 days a week with high volume, and then they're wondering why they're not getting results, right? It's not that intermittent fasting is bad. It's not that having 5 workouts per week is a bad thing. But if these things are physiologically misaligned, they're not going to get the best possible results. In a case like I'm mentioning above, if you want to look like you lift and you're trying to build lean muscle, intermittent fasting probably isn't the best tool for you, because the main reason intermittent fasting works for fat loss is you limit the number of meals that you have, and therefore it is harder to overeat calories. So why would you set up yourself with a diet that is inherently more difficult to consume enough calories to build lean muscle when you're trying to build lean muscle? So this is where a lot of people will just pick random things off the internet and never really have any structure that they're going to focus on. So in terms of a structured plan, this is what I would recommend. If you want to look like you lift, you should be training about 4 days per week. I prefer an upper-lower training split, meaning you train your upper body one day, your lower body the next. You can do this Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. You can go every other day. So 1 week you train 3 days, one day, or 1 week you train 4. And the reason we like to do this is when we train exercises and movement patterns multiple times throughout the week, we can actually increase muscle protein synthesis within those muscles more often. In addition, if you are, say, doing a squat pattern twice per week, that becomes 2 times per week. You get to practice that movement pattern. As I alluded to in the first tip here, we don't want to have just random exercises. When we do an exercise more often, we build the skill. And as we build that skill, it allows us actually to dial in different areas of our technique more specifically to lead to better overall training. So reason number 2 why you don't look like you lift is you're pulling random shit together off the internet and you do not have a structured plan. You need to create a structured plan that's in alignment with your goals if you want to look like you lift. I recommend an upper-lower training split done about 4 days per week. Many times we'll have about 5 exercises within that workout program, and our rep schemes will start a little bit lower. So we're building enough strength, and then we're going to increase the reps as we go to build a little bit more metabolic stress, which will lead to muscle growth. Reason number 3 that you do not look like you lift is having too much variety. Now, this ties into not having structure and picking random exercises. But the most important concept to understand here is strength training is a skill, and we build skill primarily through doing the same thing consistently and refining. You see, it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect. And so what you need to do is be focused in on your technique. Are you having the right intent behind the bar when you're lifting? Are you controlling each rep in the way that you're executing each rep as you are lifting? Are you performing consistent movement patterns, or do you have large gaps in what you're doing? The most important thing here is to treat that strength like a skill and not have so much variety that you're just throwing things against the wall and preventing your body from actually adapting. Reason number 4 you do not look like you lift is having no focus on your diet, especially when it comes to changing your physique. For many people, the training aspect is actually the easy one. They like to get in the gym, they like to get behind the weights, like to throw weights around, have a great time. Totally get it. Well, the reality is, if we want to be able to maximize a body composition, we want to build lean muscle, we want to lose body fat, we need to be able to dial in what we are doing nutritionally. And so with your diet, that's going to be one of the most important things you can emphasize, simply because that is the driving factor behind whether you're going to build lean tissue, lose body fat, or do nothing at all. So what you should do specifically is get clear on what goal is going to have the biggest impact for you. The vast majority of guys who have been lifting are going to do best when they first focus on getting leaner. When you get leaner, you're actually going to look bigger. You're going to be more vascular. You're going to have better muscle definition. In addition, you're going to be healthier all the way through. You're going to have better insulin sensitivity, meaning your body's going to partition nutrients much more effectively. So you're more likely to build lean muscle and lose body fat. One of the biggest issues that I see is people say, hey, yeah, I want to build muscle and lose fat. And then they have a nonstop kind of shift in what they're doing nutritionally. They have no structure to be able to refine things. They do pretty well for a couple days, then they start to feel small, so then they overeat, and then they start to feel a little bit fat, and then they go back into diet. The best plan that you can have is going to be able to get leaner first, get to roughly 12% body fat. Even 15 is fine. For most people, that means at least some abdominal visibility is going to be present. And after you get to that point, then you want to flip the script and build lean muscle tissue. Now, the important thing to understand here is you can lose fat a lot faster than you can build lean muscle. You can lose 2, sometimes even 3 pounds of body fat per week if you are dialed in with your nutrition and with your training and your recovery. But building lean muscle, if you're a beginner and you're doing everything right, we're talking 1 to 2 pounds of pure muscle tissue in a month. Doesn't sound like a lot until you factor in 25 pounds of muscle in a year, which would dramatically change anyone's physique. You have to put your expectations in alignment with where you're at. But generally speaking, what I see for most guys is like, hey, focus 90 days on getting lean. You're going to look and feel so much better. Once you get to that point, you're going to become aware of what muscles you need to emphasize to really look like you lift. And your body's going to be primed to be in a state where you can actually take the additional calories needed to build lean muscle and do it appropriately without gaining more body fat. So that's where my focus would be. Now, specifically when it comes to looking like you lift and what we need to focus on, the next piece is training the right muscle groups in order to look like you lift. Now, if we want to maximize the aesthetics, what we're talking about, for most guys, it's what we call an X-shaped physique. So an X-shaped physique is going to be broader shoulders. It's going to be wider lats, bigger upper back, and then it's going to be able to actually have glutes, hamstrings, and a lower body, right? And so the reason we want to focus on this, like let's think about the top half first. We're talking about the V-taper physique. When you build broader shoulders, it's going to naturally accentuate a more narrow waist. This gives you the overall power look, and it's just going to do a lot for overall posture and the way that your body's looking. Now, of course, we have the lower half that we want to worry about, so that's why we call it the X-shaped physique. When we start to build up your glutes, your hamstrings, the lower body, this is where the power comes from, right? You don't want to be one of these guys with chicken legs who, can't squat, sprint, or do anything cool. Like, come on, nobody wants that look. And so what we need to think about is what muscles are your weak points that we need to bring up. Once you get leaner, this is a great job of exposing what most of those are. Now, a couple areas that I often see for guys that they really need to bring up. Number one would be the lateral delt. So we got the anterior delt, you've got the posterior, of course, then we have the lateral on the side. These are what start to give your shoulders a little bit more width. Inherently, a lot of training is imbalanced. Most guys definitely overdevelop their anterior delts because they do a lot more pressing than anything else in the gym. So anytime we're pressing, we're hitting the anterior delts. Anytime we're doing a pulling exercise, we're going to be hitting the rear delts to an extent. But so what tends to happen is we have massively overdeveloped anterior delts, a little bit of development in the rear delt, and then some development in terms of that lateral delt. What we want to be able to focus on is bringing up where the weak points are. And so for most people, we're going to need to focus at least on the shoulders in terms of bringing up both the lateral delts and bringing up the rear delts. Now, in terms of doing this specifically, I could make this into its own podcast, but let me give you a couple quick tips. Because the anterior delts tend to be trained a ton more, we're going to actually pull back some of the volume if you're working on your shoulders directly. A common thing I like to do would be something like a single arm press, 3 sets of 6 to 8. Then we'd hit something for your lateral delt, 4 sets of 10 to 8. So this could be a standing cable behind the back lateral raise. This is a great exercise because it works your shoulder in the scapular plane. So if you see me just on video right here, this would be coming up and actually out to the side by about 30%. That's going to be a great way to build the lateral aspect of your shoulder. And then rear delts. I love rear delt swings. One of the most important things to focus focus on with a rear delt swing, which generally going to do that chest supported, is we want to focus on not squeezing your shoulder blades together. When you squeeze your shoulder blades together, when you're doing a rear delt exercise, guess what? You're actually going to be taking the tension directly off of that rear delt, and you're going to put it on your traps and your rhomboids because you're retracting your shoulders, right? Got a great YouTube video on this as well. I'll make sure that this is in the show notes. So that would be shoulders, just as an example. Another thing would actually be focusing a lot more just on your posterior chain in general. So many guys focus primarily trying to build up their biceps, trying to build up their chest because that's what they see in the mirror. The reality is a powerful physique really begins with your back. And so we want to focus on having at least 2 pulling days or days where we're hitting pulling exercises and really making a focus on horizontal pulls. So I'm talking single arm dumbbell rows, chest supported rows, cable rows, inverted rows, bent over rows. These are not only going to help improve overall back development and help build that V-tapered physique, but they are also going to add some additional volume on your forearms and your biceps. So that's going to be some additional growth that you will see there. In addition, if you're really interested, I've got a program called the X Physique that you can check out, originally written on T Nation. If you want me to send that over to you, just drop a comment below and I will get that sent your way. Reason number 5, you do not look like you lift. No focus on training close to failure. All right. Actually, this is probably number 6 because I went on a bit of a rant regarding shoulder training, but that's neither here nor there. So not training close to failure. The reality is if you want to build sufficient muscle, you need to be able to take exercises close to the point of failure. This means when you are doing an exercise, there should be a involuntary decrease in terms of rep speed. So think about a bench press. If you're doing a bench press and your last rep comes up just as easy as the very first rep, you're probably not pushing these muscles hard enough to really elicit a muscle building response. The reality is progressive tension overload is what we need to create within your workouts, within your exercises, and within your muscles if you want to be able to grow. The reality is most people just don't train hard enough. So let's take an example of that bench press. What I like to do is what we call a double progression method. So on a bench press, let's say you're doing 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps. When we have a rep range like 6 to 8, what you want to do is you want to select a rep or you want to select a weight where you're failing around the bottom end of the rep range. So 6. So let's say in week 1, you are doing 80 pounds with the dumbbells for 6 reps and you're failing by the end. Awesome. What we want to do is we want to keep that weight at 80 pounds and we want to increase until we hit that top end of the rep range. So week 1, maybe you go 80 times 6. Week 2, maybe you go 80 times 7. And week 3, hey, you hit 8 on all of them. Awesome. Now we drop the reps back down to 6 and we increase the weight to 85 or 90. And then we continue to repeat that process. So the reality is we have to be able to take these exercises close to failure if you want to be able to grow. And this doesn't mean that your form goes completely out the window. We want to make sure that we are using ideal and optimal form at all times. Sometimes are you going to be a little bit off? Of course, when you're pushing your body, you will be. But that's something that you learn with time. But what we're looking for is being able to maintain that optimal form. Then as an example, if that rep speed slows down towards the end and you're just barely able to complete the rep, that is an indication that you are training hard enough to elicit muscle growth. And so we need to be able to focus on that directly within your work sets if you want to look like you lift. Now, reason number 6 that you do not look like you work out is you are too damn impatient. This happens a lot. You see results, you see somebody on social media showing testimonials, and you're like, yeah, I should get that. I should be able to lose 30 pounds in 90 days or whatever it is, right? Well, so the reality is, first, when you're seeing things like that on social media, understand that these are the most elite results that somebody is getting, which is why they want to showcase them. So it could be a great trainer who's showcasing this, and the results that they are showing probably aren't what 100% of their clients are getting. It might be the top 25%, right? And so one, understand that from the front. Now, in terms of how long does it take to get results, it's important to understand what is actually physiologically possible, especially for somebody who is natural, right? If somebody's on gear, it's a completely different story. But if somebody's natural, here's what you should understand. When it comes to losing body fat, we're generally looking at probably about 1 to 2 pounds per week for women and 2 to 3 pounds per men. There's going to be some variation with this based on body size, based on training history. But if you're doing everything right, that's about how much body fat you can expect to lose. Now, you can push a diet more aggressively, but if you do more than about a 30% calorie deficit for 4 to 6 weeks, then you're going to run into issues in terms of losing lean muscle. Your performance is going to crater. And long term, that's where we start to deal with issues like metabolic damage and hitting plateaus. So we don't want that. So fat loss, we can reverse engineer it. If you're pushing things aggressively, you can expect to lose a couple pounds per week. Now, when it comes to building lean muscle, here's what we should understand. There's some great research by both Lyle McDonald and Alan Aragon that breaks down some of the muscle building, the maximum rates of muscle growth. I actually have a full article on this. We'll put this in the show notes as well. You can probably do a Google search under Eric Bach maximum rate of muscle growth, and you'll see an awesome article about 3,000 words that breaks all of this down. Now, that said, what is a maximum rate of muscle growth? If you're somebody who's a brand new lifter, you're new to the gym and you do everything right. You have a great training program. You're actually sticking to your diet. You're not getting hammered every weekend. You are getting enough sleep. All of those great things. You can expect to add 1 to 2 pounds of lean muscle tissue each and every single month. This goes down basically every single year as you train. So somebody who's a beginner, 1 to 2 years of solid training, you're looking more or less at 15 to 25 pounds of muscle. For somebody who's an intermediate, this could be 2 to 3, even 4 years of training. This is where the vast majority of people are. Then you're looking at something like 6 to 12 pounds of muscle in a year. And then the third version would be somebody who's more advanced. Then it could be something even like 3 to 6 pounds in the entire year if you're focused on building lean muscle and you're maximizing every process. Now, scale weight can increase more because you're going to have increases in terms of water weight. You're going to have more stored muscle glycogen. You're going to have more body fat. Even if you keep your body fat percentage the same, or even if it goes down, you're still probably going to add a little bit of body fat, right? So what we need to understand is when somebody is naturally drug-free, they can expect to add about 45 to 50 pounds of lean muscle to their body naturally. That's about the upper limit that the research has really shown that we can do. Women, it tends to be about half of that. And what we have to properly do is align what are the expectations that we have in terms of the speed of results with what we want to accomplish. And so if you're somebody who's been in the gym for a while, but maybe you're not recovering properly, your nutrition hasn't been great, you're not following a structured program, you can technically still be a beginner and add that 12 to 25 pounds of muscle in a year. A lot of people think just because they've worked out for a long period of time that they're intermediate or they're advanced, when the reality is they aren't. They haven't been doing things correctly. I know it can be hard to hear, but that's the reality for a lot of people. And so when it comes to that process, think about what specific results you want. Let's say you want to lose 20 pounds. Cool. You're probably looking at 12 weeks. Let's say you want to add 20 pounds of muscle. Cool. You're probably looking at a year. And so when you start to align your expectations with what's actually physiologically possible, if you're doing everything correctly, then you set yourself up for success. But if you operate in a way where you're not sure what kind of results you can actually expect, when you're not sure how fast you can lose fat or build muscle, you can easily fall prey to unrealistic expectations. Then everything feels like a failure, even if you're on the right track. And that's one of the things I hate to see most. People who think that they aren't getting results, when in reality they are, their expectations of what's realistic have just been skewed based on all the crap that they see on social media. Now, the final reason that most people don't look like they work out is they have poor sleep. And what do I mean by that? Listen, sleep is arguably the most important thing for your long-term health. Like even more than training, even more than nutrition. It's because every single repair process in your body is optimized when you sleep. If we want to look at hormones, every single hormone is going to be improved and optimized with better sleep. There's a lot of research that actually looks at this as well. One, in fact, is called the Chicago Sleep Study. And I don't have it directly in front of me here, but it goes along the lines of they used a number of college-age men around 20 years old, and they limited their sleep to 5 hours or less for 5 days in a row. They measured their testosterone at baseline and then their testosterone when they had the sleep deprivation, quote unquote sleep deprivation at less than 5 hours per week for 5 days. What happened? Their testosterone levels dropped by about 20%. Essentially, these 20-year-old men had the testosterone levels of men who are now 40, based on getting 5 hours of sleep or less for 5 days in a row. That's shocking, especially as a parent. Tell you what, I've had my share of time periods where I've had less than 5 hours of sleep, and it is not the most fun thing to go through. And there are some people who operate like this on a regular basis because they're working their asses off professionally. Maybe they have sleep issues. Maybe they are just pulling, multiple different jobs and they have kids at home. Whatever the case, a lot of people tend to look towards their training. They look to their nutrition, but they never really focus on their sleep because they're incredibly busy, or frankly, they're spending too much time on Netflix. But if we want to be able to get the most out of what you're doing in the gym, if you want to optimize your hormones naturally, if you want to be able to look, feel, and perform your best, not just physically, but mentally, and prevent disease, then we have to optimize sleep. And so optimizing sleep, what are we talking about here? Well, we want to aim for at least 7 hours of sleep per night. 8 is even better. And so when it comes to that, I like to follow what we call a 10-3-2-1-0 sleep system. I picked this up from Coach Craig Ballantyne years ago. And so essentially, here's what it is. 10 hours before bed, you want to cut out any source of caffeine, which is why I will take something like a caffeine-free pre-workout like I'm sipping right now. I think this one is a Legion Pulse strawberry kiwi, or actually strawberry margarita, which is great. Maybe I'll have margarita later. Anyway, so we got 10 hours, or we have 10 hours we want to cut back on caffeine. That's because the half-life of caffeine can keep making sure that we have caffeine that's in your body. The reason we want to have a delay with caffeine is caffeine has a half-life, meaning that after a certain duration of time, we're going to have still some caffeine circulating your body, which can actually disrupt your sleep, even if you are still tired. 3 hours before bed, we want to start cutting out food and even reduce the water if possible. Reason being, when we are eating too close to bedtime, it's not that eating after 8 causes you to gain weight. It's that eating at night, later at night, actually can prevent your body from optimizing the sleep quality that you have, because your body's focused on digesting your food when you're supine, laying down, instead of breaking down and recovering, everything that's going on mentally throughout the day. And your organs actually need sufficient time to have a break from consuming food and working all day. So they don't have as much time to regenerate if they're constantly digesting food, even when you're sleeping. Plus, if you are waking up and going to the bathroom nonstop because you're drinking all your water at night trying to play catch up, that's also going to disrupt the quality of the sleep that you're getting. 2 hours before bed, reduce work, try to get away from anything you're doing that's going to fire your brain up and keep you focused on the next day. One of the most important things that you can do, this is what I do, is I have my notebook right here. When I'm done with my workday, I set what's called a reverse alarm. 15 minutes before I'm done, I will write down everything that needs to get done tomorrow. Just do a brain dump, get it out of my brain, get it on a piece of paper so I do not miss anything. That way, I have everything down and I can disconnect from work. I can be present with my family and I can optimize that recovery instead of optimizing on a million things I have to do in business the very next day. 1 hour before bed, do your best to avoid blue light, TVs, screens, all of that. If you cannot do that, I definitely understand it. You got like the kids monitor over here, all these different things going on. See if you can get some blue blocking glasses, or at least use an app like Flux on your computer if you end up working late and not paying attention to the previous tip, or turn down your phone to the lowest possible settings. Most TVs also have this as well. The blue light that gets emitted from these devices suppresses the release of melatonin inside your brain, which prevents you from getting proper sleep. So 10, 3, 2, 1, 0. That 0 means if you follow these steps, then you should be in a great spot to not hit snooze the very next day. Speaking of hitting snooze, we want to be able to go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time each day. If you are a weekend warrior, not in the way we're talking about like working out, but you like to go out on weekends and you have a lot of a big social life, then if you're going out and then you're getting up 2 or 3 hours earlier on Monday, you're effectively giving yourself jet lag each week. And I can guarantee you Monday and Tuesday are probably less productive. You're probably only hitting your stride mentally Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So try to keep a consistent waking and rising time as much as you can if you want to optimize the quality of sleep that you are getting. So 7 reasons, actually 8, why you don't look like you work out even when you're pushing hard. 1, random exercises. 2, not having a structured plan. 3, way too much variety in those workouts. 4, you're not focused on your diet. 5, you're not training close enough to failure. 6, you're impatient and you don't have a realistic expectations on how fast you can actually see results, leading you to change gears and program hop. And then number 7, you are not getting proper sleep. Without proper sleep, there's no way we can optimize all the hormones and body systems that are required for you to be able to look, feel, and perform your best. So there we have it. If you want to look like you lift, what you need to do, dial in your training, make sure that you have a program that's really built to improve your life, not consume it, and make sure that you're training hard and close to failure. Now, you can piecemeal all the tips that you want together from the internet, or you can head over to bachperformance.com, find out the best workout tips and the systems that you can take to build lean muscle now. And if you want me to work individually with you, create a handcrafted program that's going to help you look great naked without living in the gym, go to bachperformance.com/coaching, fill out the short form below. You and I will hop on an individual call and we will get you all set up and help you transform your life once and for all. With that said, Eric Bach signing off. I'll catch you on the next one. Did you find this helpful? If so, pound that like button and hit subscribe. Now, if you want a free copy of our Chiseled Muscle Cheat Sheet, the no BS way to help you lose body fat and build lean muscle in 90 days, make sure that you go to the description below and download your free copy. Any questions? Drop them in the comments, and can't wait to see you with the next video.